The Book of Inner Paths by Péter Popper, translated from the Hungarian by Gábor Szurányi and Joshua A. Williams, recorded and sound edited by Mindfreak Productions, narrated by Sam Hall. Episode 2, Basic Exercises. These exercises play a significant role in mental hygiene. They are particularly suited for bringing order to an emotionally troubled psyche, the symptoms of which are extreme instability in temperament, irritability, periods of depression, deterioration of one's rhythm, hurrying, and being easily distracted. It must be stressed that with the help of these exercises, symptomatic results can be achieved. However, the underlying causes of this emotionally troubled psyche will not disappear. Eradicating these root causes can only either be achieved through exploratory psychotherapy or through the understanding that will come about through the contemplation of an introspective self-knowledge, as explained later in the book. This journey often leads to a complete change in lifestyle. Our highest goal with these exercises is to increase our tolerance and our resilience to the burdens of everyday life. These exercises are primarily useful as a means of eliminating psychological instability triggered by our external environment. Its effects on general development, however, are not to be underestimated. These basic exercises are, in addition, suitable for maintaining one's psychological balance and even signal if the newly acquired balance is in danger of being upset. These simple exercises, which can be completed in a few minutes, touch on 5 areas of psychological life. 1. Concentration. 2. The development of the will. 3. Self-control in the expression of emotions and tempers. 4. Openness to the positive. And 5. An impartiality of judgment and an ability to change views in the interest of objectivity. The exercises are structurally linked, and each serves to bolster and monitor the others. Because of this, it is not admissible to single out only one of the exercises to complete. There are 2 conditions for obtaining a positive result. 1 is the observation of prescribed cyclical shifts. The second is consistent regularity over a long period of time. There is no point in completing the exercises in a flippant manner. Some days doing them and some days forgetting about them, both haphazardness and starting without completing the exercises could, from the standpoint of our psychological balance, have an undesirable effect. Therefore, it is only worthwhile undertaking these exercises if one is able to give 6 months' time to them. They require daily, no more than 5 minutes to complete. Only then can we be certain to experience an intensive positive effect. Ideally, the 5 basic exercises would be incorporated into our daily lives in such a way as they would become as much a habit as brushing our teeth. The effects of these basic exercises emerge, as we shall see, in 2 stages. As a result, the basic exercises have both a double function and a double meaning. The first stage. The first stage is learning the period of the exercises. This is when we master how to perform them flawlessly. The learning process can last a few weeks or even as much as a few months. Substantial personal variances exist depending on the individual's abilities and psychological state. During the development period, there is no such thing as failure. If we look at the process from the point of view of spiritual impact, the key is the effort that we put into performing the exercises. If every exercise were immediately successful, then we wouldn't need to do them at all. It must also be noted that some exercises will show results after a short period of time, while others will remain stubbornly fruitless. This signals the area of our spiritual life that is chaotic and has deficiencies. In spite of this, we must not prioritize these problematic exercises. Even if the exercise fails at the termination of the prescribed time, we must stop doing this exercise and calmly move on to the next one. When the cycle involving the unsuccessful exercise comes around again, we will automatically have better results. The second stage. The second stage involves the continuation of the learned practices in an orderly manner. During this period, we should be able to successfully carry out all of the exercises. They can be completed in just a couple of minutes and have become part of our lives. At this stage, these basic exercises already act as a monitoring function on the self, and spiritually trying burdens and life situations can be revealed. If, at this time, our exercises are fruitful, there is no reason to be concerned about our psychological state. It could happen, however, that we observe the following. After a long period of successfully completed exercises, one or two of them begin to be disrupted. This is an early but meaningful sign that our psychological state is deteriorating and that we have surpassed our capacity for coping. This shows us the spiritual area in which our ability to perform has become decreased. This is a serious warning. A change is needed in our lifestyle and in the way we run our lives. Our conflicts and problematic situations cannot be repeated without endangering our psychological health. We need to look for possible solutions. These exercises give us the possibility to keep our psychological state in continual check. All 5 exercises are to be completed for a week. Then, regardless of the results, we turn to the next exercise. In the 6th week, again we turn to the first exercise, and the cycle begins anew. There is a practice in which a different exercise is done each day during the 6th week, followed by 2 days of rest, and then beginning with the 7th week, the cycle is started from the beginning. Everyone must experiment to find out which method is best for him or her. 1. The concentration of thought. Once, daily, in calm, quiet surroundings, alone if possible, when we don't have to worry for a few minutes about being distracted, we place a simple object in front of us, like a pen, needle, or pair of glasses. In the mind, meaning silently. But in specifically formulated sentences, we say everything that is characteristic of the object. Here is an example of a successful exercise. Pencil. It is used for drawing and writing. In its centre, there is soft graphite because it leaves a mark easily on the paper. However, graphite is fragile and, therefore, is encased in soft wood. It is necessary to use soft wood so that the pencil can be sharpened easily. This outer layer is cut to an angular shape so that the pencil doesn't slip in the hand. It is painted, varnished, and the degree of hardness of the graphite appears on the outside. This information is there because there are different types of work that require different degrees of graphite hardness, and with this information showing on the outside, we are able to buy the proper pencil for the job. Now an example of an unsuccessful exercise. Pencil. I really like pencils and erasers, and when I was a child I had a whole collection of them. I always spent my money on them. My father would be very angry because of this. The inside is graphite. What's graphite? I don't remember, although we learnt about it in school. The outside is soft wood. The soft wood is perhaps pine. Last summer in the mountains, I saw pine wood logging. It was interesting how the trees fell and how they got the branches off. A tractor with continuous track wheels brought the trucks down the valley, etc., etc. As can be seen, the point is not to allow our thoughts to wander. We should focus the associations which otherwise would jump and scatter. Exercise 2. The development of the will. We often see that general opinion attributes a myth of the will to psychology. It is postulated that the cause of many inner issues is cloaked in the weakness of the will. A person's volitional functions seem undecided, as if their development require a strong determination and nothing else. In reality, a person's volitional life is an especially complex organizational system which doesn't in the least depend on the proper functioning, the emotional well-balance, or the value system of the person in question. In fact, the volitional life is greatly dependent on these entities. The development of the will is only conceivable because of this. These so-called exercises of the will fit in integrally with the others and cannot be completed independently. This basic exercise consists of the following. At the beginning of the week, we make a firm resolution to complete a certain activity once every day at a specific time, e.g. at exactly 3 p.m. Then, we are talking about simple things, turning our rings on our fingers, or silently reciting a favourite line of a poem, etc. It is vital that we do not interrupt any activities that we have been doing. Therefore, we should not be sitting stiffly upright already at 2:45 p.m. in preparation. The goal is that while we are doing what we have to do, our resolution comes to mind in its own time, and we carry it out too. Perhaps in the beginning, this exercise will cause the greatest difficulty. The activity will already come to mind at 10 to 3, but then we will look at the clock again and it's closer to 3:15. The most important aspect of this exercise is the mastery of a perfect and to-the-minute punctuality. What renders its execution more difficult is that when the time is not at the top of the hour, but rather, for example, at 5:13 p.m, if we are very devout, we can note down the number of successes and failures, and 5 weeks later, when we come back to this exercise, we can use this record to see whether our execution of this exercise has improved. Exercise 3. Self-control above the expression of emotions. First off, we must dispel a possible misunderstanding. The purpose of this exercise is not to reduce the intensity of our emotional reactions so that we don't express pleasure or bitterness or fly into a temper. On the contrary, we must cultivate and develop the entire person inside ourselves. A person who experiences a wide range of emotions knows anger, joy, sadness, and ecstasy. The purpose of this exercise is for us to dominate in the external expression of our emotional affective state, independently of our will. We must not do so spontaneously. Our success must be such that the external world is unaware of how we feel, although we deeply experience those emotions that are caused by what the world and events around us bring out in us. Here, we must only express what we intentionally wish to. Moreover, our expression should be strictly related to what we want to tell and the impression we want to give off. The expression of our emotion is, therefore, transformed into a conscious means of communication. This can be obtained if the external manifestation of our emotions corresponds exactly to what is inside of us. This is vital for a harmonious connection with our surroundings, as well as for achieving a better understanding of each other. To a greater or lesser extent, several times a day, we experience joy, sorrow, success, failure, kindness, and repentance. During this week of self-control exercises, we should be mindful that our reactions to these emotional influences should not be spontaneous or visible to the outside observer. The exception to this would be, for example, when expressing gratitude or reproach, we want our mood to be known. At the beginning, and in the interest of the exercise's successful execution, it is best if we keep these to a minimum. It is essential that the indifferent milieu does not take notice of our momentary mood. For example, at work, it should not be recognized that we have problems at home, and we should not burden those around us at work with our anxiety. There are several possibilities for the external expression of our emotional state. In the first place, our facial expressions, our behaviour, and our language. We need to be mindful of these. During this week, we should maintain self-control over our facial expressions, our behaviour, and our speech. Therefore, we shouldn't make grimaces or excessive body movements, swear, burst into laughter, or rejoice uncontrollably. Most of all, we should take a break from complaining or from detailed explanation of the causes for our joy, in other words, unnecessary chatting. These days, it is common practice in the right company, or confidentially drawing somebody aside, to make an account to them of our grievances and our joys. During this week, we also take a break from this. In its place, we pay attention to our surroundings and we adapt our behaviour to the mood of the others. And we take pains to let them speak to us about their positive or negative challenges and the events that concern them. Conventional wisdom shows that before we begin to speak, it is important to think over what we want to say. We need to reflect. Is it important? Is it true? Does it stem from goodwill? Exercise number 4. Being open to the positive. In the week of this exercise, we must focus on our troubles, on these events and interactions that produce fear, disapproval, and irritation within us. In this way, we must first pinpoint our negative feelings as well as the assessments and unfavourable opinions that stem from them. The purpose of this exercise is to make us think through situations and interactions that are generated from troubling or negative assessments of the situation at hand, and to do so from a different point of view, looking for the positive within them. We must be conscious of the fact that the majority of situations are not simply good or bad, but are made up of a complex fabric of favourable and unfavourable associations, possibilities, and consequences. Those decisions which seemingly hurt us can actually be seen as favourable in a different, broader context. A situation that causes temporary annoyance can later result in a good outcome, or, from another point of view, can be seen as useful. During the course of the exercise, we must strive to mentally discover the positive side of perceived negative situations that we encounter. Many times, in order to achieve this, we abandon our customary point of view, our prejudices, our self-interested views, and our automatically learnt system of judgment. Throughout the execution of these exercises, we must avoid a possible misunderstanding. We should not, however, in the interest of being positive, label bad things as favourable and valuable, nor should we act obliviously by putting on our rose-coloured glasses when viewing negative occurrences and incidents. This is not what we're talking about here. The task lies in consistently and clearly seeing the negative character of questionable occurrences or happenings and, from within them, also trying to discover some type of value. Again, we're talking about very simple things. Instead of focusing on the broken vase that the cat knocked over, we can focus on the beauty of the cat's movements. Instead of the ugly, shrunken elderly person, his candour and mildness. When soaked to the bone during a storm, the beauty of popping bubbles. In our young colleague's mistakes, the charm of his confusion. In the case of an unpleasant person, acknowledging that he keeps his house much tidier than we ever could. Exercise 5. The impartiality of judgment. When, day after day, we come face to face with the world's smaller or greater happenings, and its people, animals, plants and minerals, we hear news and information, and our thoughts and judgments are represented by a certain familiarity, fixedness, and repeated sequence of thought. What comes to mind first is what we have learned, heard, and experienced in relation to these things. From our childhood, from our upbringing and schooling, we have acquired a system of received judgments and verbal formations, which, in the end, encases us in a virtually closed shell. Because of this, only in the rarest of cases do we experience the true essence of these things and events. Our opinions and experiences are formed from the often distorted impressions that we have obtained, all of them passing through the sieve of previously formed opinions and systems of biases and received attitudes. During the week of the exercise on impartial judgment, daily we must endeavour to examine at least one thing, phenomenon or event, almost with the gaze of a small, naive child. We should look at the object as it really is, regardless of whether we are familiar with it or what we have learnt about it. The purpose of this exercise is not to accept something as self-evident, nor pigeonhole anything, but rather to utilize our own power of judgment and way of viewing the problem. One of the preconditions to this is that we should make an abstraction from our own person and rather focus on and elevate the phenomenon itself, regardless of whether this is pleasant or unpleasant for us, and irrespective of which feelings and associations come forth. Many scientific discoveries have arisen out of a child's gaze. For millennia, humankind took for granted that objects fall downwards. However, Newton didn't stare in passive wonder at this occurrence. After seeing their bacteria culture annihilated from mould, many hundreds of researchers bitterly threw the cultures out. That is, until Fleming saw an opportunity in it. The impartiality of judgment was an important element in the discovery of both gravity and antibiotics. In the beginning, we should set out to complete easier tasks. For example, we can put a matchstick in front of ourselves and look at it closely and try to think through all of the possible uses for it, aside from lighting the fire. In the same way, we can proceed to other simple objects, disregarding that we already know about these things. Little by little, we should make the exercise more difficult until we reach a level of an unbiased judgment of a person and his or her actions. These exercises are somewhat more difficult. Let us hear a person's story in a manner in which we temporarily suppress our own reflections, approvals, and opinions. Let the voice, the facial expressions, and the moment affect us. Let's try to mirror him or her on the inside without any movement. It would be surprising how much more subtle and so far hidden information we acquire. One of the greatest barriers to getting to know other people is that our focus is divided between the speakers and our own reactions. In fact, we often only focus on ourselves. He or she speaks to us while we are already thinking of the formation of the dissenting opinion. Let's try, at least one time per day, to impartially judge a person's behaviour. If somebody is nasty with us, he or she could be respectable with somebody else. Let's try to put ourselves in his or her shoes and to understand the motive behind his behaviour. And in the same way, we should let ourselves be affected by the sunset, the mountain, the tree, the flower, and the animal. If we are listening to music, we should forget the composer, the conductor, and the different instrumental groups. And we should give ourselves up exclusively to the sound. The biggest obstacle to this exercise is ego-centeredness and prejudice. The result of the exercise is independent thought and the development of empathy. End of episode 2.